Hello, welcome to this short introduction to CA Process Automation Solution Suite. My name is Stephen Tyler, VP of Software Engineering for the Process Automation product area. Solution Suite is a new user interface and user experience, and it's something we're introducing because of a difference in usage pattern that we're seeing amongst our customers and the requests that are driving our product forward. So let's talk briefly about those usage patterns. The existing process automation user experience was designed for what we're calling an ops tool usage pattern. It's designed for an operational sysadmin to do runbook automation, where you use PAM as a tool with a centralized library of content in which you can build automation routines, processes, and data sets and all the other automation objects we have in the existing PAM today. And the sysadmin is creating and then running those processes when they need to, or scheduling them as need be, typically in a production environment. The deployment mode behind that is one where we would deploy an instance of process automation, where you would write, test, run, and monitor your automation content. And broadly, as a user of the sysadmin, you think of PAM as a sort of friendly robot that helps you do your day-to-day tasks in a reliable, routine, repeatable way. Content management for that, in terms of how you manage your automation content, is relatively easy because it's just like saving files in a file system. There's a hierarchical library in PAM where you store that content. And you don't really have to move it around very much between different instances of PAM. It just all sits there in PAM. So that ops tool usage pattern for a runbook automation is a perfectly valid case for the PAM product. It's what PAM product was designed for. The whole of the existing PAM user experience is designed for that usage pattern and for that persona, that sysadmin persona. And we are going forward, retain our existing UX. So nothing of what I'm about to show you implies that anything that you're maybe already familiar with in the PAM user experience is going away. It's not. That will still be there. But we are also going to be introducing a new user experience to deal with a very different usage pattern. So the new usage pattern that we're seeing is what I'm going to call the app dev usage pattern, which is where solution developers are really writing orchestration-based solutions that get deployed to test environments and then onto production environments, very much more like an app dev life cycle. PAM is being, those solutions are being written using PAM processes as a way of encoding the logic and data sets, and a bag of PAM content is being created in a dev instance of PAM and being moved into test and being moved into production, particularly for cases where large enterprises or customers create either service delivery applications or internal service bureau applications using PAM as the app development environment. So the deployment mode there is a lot more complicated. You'll have PAM servers, and we can think of them in this context as solution servers, in development, in various test environments, performance tests, user acceptance tests, and production environments. And you would be actually creating the solution in an instance of PAM that is in a development environment. You think of PAM as an app dev platform, which is a very, very different beast to a friendly robot that helps you with your routine maintenance tasks. And critically, the content management is very different indeed, because now what you have to do is create your solution content, which will be a set of related content, and you need to be able to move that from one system to another system in a relatively easy and reliable way, and configure that solution on different environments. So that set of problems, which isn't dealt with very well by the existing process automation user experience and design, was coming up a lot in enhancement requests that we were hearing from our customers for quite a while. And we started to realize that it was in some ways trying to bang a square peg in a round hole. And because of the way that PAM was being used by those customers who were asking for those features around solution lifecycle management was fundamentally different. So this app dev usage pattern is very different, has different personas involved in it. And so what we're going to do, and what we've done, is to deploy a new application, essentially, that is Solution Suite It will leverage PAM and provide an entirely new set of UIs for the personas, the developer and ops and end user personas involved in the app dev usage pattern. So that's what we're here to talk about, the solution suite. It's a new UX layer. It's additional to the existing one, where the existing one supports the RBA usage pattern and personas. The new solution suite UX specifically is supporting the application development persona. So to talk about in a picture, just to reinforce that concept before we move on. So in runbook automation, you'll have I call him an ops guy here, or a sysadmin, automates IT runbooks or processes. Typically, these are independent, unrelated entities and uses the automated runbook tool to accomplish this. So that big teal-colored box there, the automation tool is PAM today. And inside there is a library of processes and related artifacts that that sysadmin will create and store in the library. He may extend the capability of that PAM instance by installing connectors that extend the capability of the tool. As a set of that, the tool, the content, and the connectors adds up to the ability to orchestrate technology that's in the data center and external IT services and people. So PAM today has the concept of interaction request forms, or IRS, so that you can have people-based interactions within a process flow. Coming to a solutions or an app dev usage pattern, starting on the left side, we actually start with a developer, someone who's responsible for building an application. And a developer works, as in any app development environment, with a development environment or an IDE. From that IDE, they only produce solutions that get deployed on a solution server, which again may be extended with connectors. And in this model, the blue box in the bottom that we've labeled solution server is essentially PAM, and the solution will be deployed onto that. But in this way of thinking about it, PAM becomes very much analogous to an application server in traditional application development, where the solution is deployed onto it, it is configured on that environment. And then critically, and this is a key piece that's new, is we have the ability to export and those solutions in a portable, easily deployable, configurable solution artifact. So we can actually take that solution as an entity from one system and move it onto another, and where you would then import and configure the solution on the target system, and it'll work. And that's an area that's somewhat difficult to do prior to the work we've done around Solution Suite. And the orientation in this usage pattern, the way you think in terms of the solution. You're building a solution. The solution has content in it. Whereas in the RBA case, you think at the content level. But again, once that solution is deployed into a target environment, we would have an ops guy involved, but this time not to write and run the content, but to manage the application. So here it's much more like managing the availability and performance of an application. These solutions also typically are often address use cases like service delivery application, where there's an implicit end user to the solution. And in many cases, traditionally we might have deployed something like service catalog in front of PAM to expose a self-service interface to business end users to be able to consume the functionality that's been implemented in PAM as a back end. What we're doing in Solution Suite is providing a dedicated interface for where the solution itself will define the user interface, and PAM will itself expose that user interface, so there is no need for deploying a catalog in front of it to meet a very simple case of providing access to a catalog of services. So within this picture, there are, and the solution obviously can still orchestrate technology and data services and people through interaction request forms in the same way as we were talking about previously. There are three main interfaces on this slide that are new. We talked about Solution Suite being a new set of user experiences. It's really three new user interfaces. The first one is on the far left, the IDE, the user interface that the developer works in. The second one is at the bottom right there, the interface that the ops guy uses to manage the solution. And then the third one is the new one I was talking about for the end user UX, which is defined by the solution itself and automatically exposed by PAM. So I'm not going to, in this very brief introduction, show all three of those, but I'm going to show a little bit of the IDE experience just to give you a flavor of it. So what you see here is the home screen that greets you if you log in as a developer to Solution Suite. You'll see you come into Solution Studio, and we have a basic tile-based UI here where each solution is represented by a tile at this level, and I have the ability to create new solutions or import solutions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a solution for the purpose of demo, and we'll call this demo solution. And when I create a new solution, I get a tile for it, and I can click that tile to drill in. And here I can have the basic anatomy of the solution is visible. So I have a bunch of basic information about it, a description, a version, a couple of properties that beyond the scope of this introduction. And then we have areas for activities, data sets, user interfaces, and configuration, which is the core units of a solution. So I'm going to start with the basic information here first, so I can go in and edit this and give it a name and a version, and I'm done. The first thing you'll see there is that the interface experience is very much designed to be a lot more modern and slick and easy to use and intuitive than the existing PAM UXs. We've tried to do this with as much focus on usability throughout as humanly possible. So let's get to the core anatomy of a solution. The core unit of work is an activity, and in Solution Suite, an activity, you can think of it as a trigger response pair. When something happens, do something. And the do something is execute a process in PAM. The trigger, we have different types of triggers that we support. So we have user activities, and a user activity is when a user submits a form, execute this process. A schedule activity is when a certain timer expires, execute this process. And an API activity is when an API call is invoked, execute this process. So along with each of these, we have editors for editing the forms, editing schedules, and editing APIs. So let me just do a user activity to get started. So if I create an activity, it's called my form. There's going to be a form that you have to submit to invoke a process. So you can see here the language of this is very simple. When this form is submitted, execute this process. Okay, so what form? So if we click the form, we go into a form editor. And those of you that are familiar with PAM4, the functionality of this form editor is essentially exactly the same as the functionality of the form editor in PAM4. It's just redesigned from a usability point of view. So I can create fields on here. So I'll add a couple of text fields and maybe a checkbox. And I can reorder those. I have arrows here to move them up and down, and I can edit them. So if I want to edit this text field, maybe I want to ask you for your favorite color. I can give it a name for reference purposes. I can say whether it's mandatory or not. These fields are exactly the same as you would have had in the PAM4 form editor for a field that you'd added to a form. So I'll just say done. And similarly, let's say we want to know your first name. Let's say that's required. And my checkbox. You can just indicate whether you're happy or not. So there I've designed a very simple form, and these forms can have multiple pages. So if you need to do a wizard, I can add another page. So if I put just a basic text control in there, you're going to see I'm on page 2 of 2. If I go back to the previous page, that was my first page, and then forward, this is my second page. I don't actually need that for the demo, so I'll delete it. So I've got this very simple form I've designed. So coming back to the activity, when that form is submitted, execute this process. So if I go into the process editor, this now should look vaguely familiar to anyone who's familiar with PAM. It's just a little bit cleaner and simpler as a user interface, but the concept is the same. So if I want to do something like sending an email, I can drag the operator onto the editor, wire it up just as I would in PAM previously. So I've built a nice little process. To edit it, I will click an operator. The panel flies out with the configuration options. So I can configure I'm not going to do it here for a quick demo, but I can go and configure this operator as I would in PAM today. The functionality around how you design a process is essentially the same as in PAM today. So execution-wise, I can set breakpoints. I can say where it runs. Does it run on the orchestrator or on a touch point or an agent? I can set pre and post execution JavaScript. So the same sort of thing that you can do in PAM today. The interface is just a little bit tidier and cleaner. So that's it. So I've defined now an activity. So coming back to my solution, I have an activity. When this form is submitted, execute this process. I can create as many of those activities as I like within the solution. Just to show an example of a different type of solution, I'll create a API activity, and I'll call this my API. And in this case, you can see it says when this API is called, execute this process. So what does the API designer look like? I have the ability just to say, okay, do I want a little bit of controls over how it behaves, which are beyond the scope of this brief introduction. But essentially, you just define the parameters you want. So if I add a parameter that says, okay, first name, and I can give it referential names here. So in first name, and I can have another parameter here in favorite color. And then an output parameter of, I don't know, what the system's opinion of you is. And that's it. So now I've defined an API. It's an API where you have to provide a couple of parameters and you have to provide and it will return a response. So what happens is, having done that, the documentation of the API is automatically generated. The form of the API is automatically generated. PAM will automatically expose the API, and when somebody makes a request on this API, passing these parameters, the associated process gets invoked, and the return value of that is passed back to the API caller. So this provides you a way to essentially just surface a process with an API. In a very, very simple way, and that's the sort of recurring theme through Solution Suite is we try to make everything as super simple as possible. You don't have to understand how to write XML or JSON in order to define your API. That's all done for you. You just say what parameters I need in, what parameters I need out. Everything else is taken care of for you. So you would continue to create as many activities as you like in your solution. The other key elements of the solution are data sets. So I'm not going to go into this in detail here, but you can have data sets that will store transitory data, so activities can read and write from a solution data set if they need to persist information between invocations. And then user interfaces. We talked before about the ability in the Solution Suite to create user interfaces for an end user. So if I do that real quick, so my user interface. So what a user interface does is just simply says, lets you declaratively say which of the user activities that I have defined in this solution do I want to put on this user interface, and I can create as many different user interfaces with different combinations of user activities surfaced on them. as I like, potentially for different types of users or users with different roles. So what this is doing is it's saying, I've got this user interface. I want to put on it the My Form activity, which is the one I created previously. And I have the ability to restrict it to one or more roles. So now I've got a user interface that will expose that form, and that's it. And to hit it, it automatically generates the URL. I can pick it right now. It's already there. And here I have a user interface, and which was automatically generated for me. I haven't had to write a single line of code to do this. If I click my form, the form I defined comes up. I can fill it out. I can click submit. It will run the associated process. And that activity that I submitted, I will be able to monitor the status of it, whether it's in progress or completed. So very simple end-user self-service interfaces, auto-generated, based upon, in this case, a single-click definition of a user interface. And what's more, it's mobile-friendly. So if I pull this down to a smaller, you'll see to smaller form factors, it relays out. And if I bring it right down to sort of mobile device size, it automatically relays out to mobile-friendly approach to user interface. So a huge amount of value there for literally one click in the IDE. And finally, coming back to the analytics, so again, I can create as many user interfaces as I like for different types of users. And then finally, in the anatomy of a solution configuration, I can create configuration properties. And the reason I do this is if I need to have some variables that I need the administrator to configure when he installs the solution, that my solution will need to read from, I would create configuration properties here for that. So, for instance, I might need a configuration property for, the local email server or something. It doesn't matter, but that may change from environment to environment. So you want to make it a configuration property that gets configured when the solution gets installed on any given target environment. And that's essentially it. For a brief introduction, that's where I'm going to end. Thank you for your attention today. Hopefully this has been interesting, and we'll look forward to hopefully engaging you with Solution Suite. Thank you very much.